thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who will buy Twitter if Elon doesn't, Mike Vandebogart.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to everybody who's tuned into Locations Unknown, either over the audio waves or on YouTube. Just a couple of quick announcements. We're going to go through our new Patreon supporters, so thank you to Dakota Gearhart, Sophia Ackerman, and Hannah Madden. Thank you so much for supporting us through Patreon. Joe and I are actually recording a fun supporter-only episode right after this where we're going to go through about 10 months of voicemails. So,
Ooh, we always talk about the voicemails. Well, if you want to hear them, be a Patreon supporter.
$1 a month. I said it on our Patreon episode last time. You know, you could probably find that in the couch cushions in your living room. So $1. Also, if you get a chance to, Joe was on, what was the podcast you were on recently?
It's called the Possible Project Podcast.
Yeah, so Joe had a really cool interview with the creator of that podcast, talking about his entrepreneurial endeavors and then talking about his experience in the wilderness and then the podcast. So if you're curious to listen to that, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. If you want to get on a future voicemail episode, you can always call our number. It's 208-391-6913 and leave a voicemail.
That's also if you have feedback, crazy feedback, compliments. If you hated something and just feel the need to just take it out on us, call that number, leave a message. We will listen to it and respond to it on Patreon episodes.
Yeah, so just keep in mind, if you do leave a voicemail, and it's really crazy, we're definitely going to play that.
Oh, yeah, we're going to play it.
So don't say anything you don't want played publicly. And just to wrap it up, I forgot last episode to thank two listeners who suggested the Michael LeMaitre case. So Sarah Rotman suggested this back in September of 2020, actually. And then Michelle Foley actually recommended the episode again, or the case again, to us in February. So thank you to both of you for.
So see, we listen.
Yes.
And sometimes it might take a couple of years, but we have a list and we have people's names, so we do pay attention.
Yes, and we've got a lot of future case episodes coming up from case suggestions from listeners just like you. So that's all I had, Joe.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown.
September 28th, 1985. 36-year-old California resident and outdoorsman left for Alaska on a multi-week remote camping trip in Glacier Bay National Park. He planned to spend 2 weeks alone in the remote wilderness, only moving from his site for occasional day hikes. Near the end of his planned stay, park officials went to check on him, only to find he had vanished. Join us this week as we investigate the strange disappearance of Kevin O'Keefe. So, Joe, Glacier Bay National Park is probably in my top 5 of parks I'd like to visit that I haven't been to yet. It looks really cool. There's a lot of different ecosystems in the park. It's a tough place to get to. I'll get into that a little bit here in the location profile.
This would be a major prep for us to go to. This wouldn't be like, hey, let's go hiking in Glacier Bay. It's no, we need to do some research, some work, all the fun things.
Yeah, so Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve lies west of Juneau, Alaska, and can only be reached by plane or boat. So you cannot drive there from the lower 48 or even from Anchorage. The only road in the area that, it's just there to connect the small town of Gustavus and its airfield to the park headquarters at Bartlett Cove. The park was established December 2nd, 1980. They get about 597,000 visitors a year per 2018. And to put this in perspective, the population of Alaska, which we brought this up last time, but we didn't know the exact number, is actually 731,000 people. So not a lot of people visit the park, but compared to how many live in Alaska, that's a pretty big number. Like I said, there are no roads that lead to the park, and it's most easily reached by air travel. But during summer months, there are ferries to the small community of Gustavus or directly to the marina in Bartlett Cove. And another frequent way people get to this park during the summer is through cruise ships. So I always thought it'd be kind of fun to do like an Alaska cruise. But the number of cruise ships they let in is regulated, so they probably don't want to wreck the local ecosystem with like hundreds of massive ships coming and going every day. This area does have some very long human history to it. So the earliest traces of human occupation at Glacier Bay date back to about 10,000 years ago. One of the issues, which I found this really interesting, because usually you don't hear about glacial activity in human time frames, but one of the reasons why they think human activity or evidence of human activity is so scarce now is because much of the area that was populated by kind of prehistoric humans has been removed by glaciers. So it kind of basically scrubbed and scoured the ground of any evidence of human activity in the region. So kind of cool.
Sounds like maybe the guy who's studying it like forgot to do his report. And he's like, it was all taken away by glaciers.
Yeah, maybe. So one of the first Europeans to explore was a French guy. He explored the Alaskan coast on foot in the region of Glacier Bay in 1786. Russian fur traders are also probably visited the region in the mid-18th century. The region was later visited by George Vancouver in Discovery in 1794 during the Vancouver expedition. And one of our favorite characters in history, John Muir, visited Glacier Bay in 1879, just prior to the 1880 establishment of Yosemite National Park. Which
he went to every national park prior to them being national parks. That's how awesome he is.
And his life's work really was getting Yosemite established as a national park, but it was said that Glacier Bay was like his second favorite park. So pretty cool. Glacier Bay spans over 5,000 miles and it has some wild elevation changes from 0 feet at the Pacific Ocean all the way up to 15,266 feet at Mount Fairweather. One of the tallest mountains in the United States, by the way. And it also marks the border between Alaska and Canada. Another cool little factoid about the park, there's over 1,000 glaciers inside of the park, which is pretty cool. And archaeologists have confirmed that the lower section of Glacier Bay was habitable until about 300 years ago when a glacier forced all of the local inhabitants to flee the area. So
it was just growing and encroaching in on their living area?
Yeah, so pretty interesting. You don't hear that a lot. Glacier Bay is actually one of the United Nations World Heritage Sites, which is kind of cool. It's one of the largest parks internationally protected. Glacier Bay National Park is part of the largest internationally protected biosphere reserves in the world and is recognized by the United Nations. Kind of cool. Like we said, John Muir is credited with discovering the park. This is interesting. I didn't know these even existed, but the park actually helps represent peace between nations. So in 1932, Glacier Bay National Park became part of the world's first international peace park, meant to celebrate peaceful relations between the United States and Canada. Known as the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park, the international designation joined Glacier with Waterton Lakes National Park in Alberta, Canada. Because of this designation, the two parks are able to collaborate in their policies for conservation, fire management, and research.
That's cool. They kind of do the same thing with one in Montana.
Glacier
National Park. I keep thinking it's not that because this is Glacier Bay.
Yeah, right. Getting into a little bit of climate here, our friends at the Köppen Climate Classification System state that there are 6 climate zones within Glacier Bay National Park. So you've got subarctic with cool summers and year-round rainfall, subpolar oceanic, temperate oceanic, humid continental, mild summer, wet all year, humid continental, dry, cool summer, and warm summer Mediterranean. So a very wide range of weather you can experience in this park depending on elevation and when you go. Record high in the park is 82 degrees Fahrenheit in June. Now, we always say like temperatures and stuff, so I put some comparisons in here with Wisconsin just to kind of show that the weather and temperature in this park are actually pretty temperate and mild compared to like even where we live. So the record high in Wisconsin, it was 114 degrees Fahrenheit from 1936.
Jeez.
The record low in Glacier Bay is minus 11 degrees Fahrenheit. In Wisconsin, it was minus 55 in 1996.
I was going to say the record low is only minus 11?
Yeah.
I feel like we just had that.
Yeah, right. So that's like January in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, negative 55 degrees in the 96. So
yeah.
I remember that.
It was cold.
Well, we had negative like 40 and 50 with wind chill.
Yeah.
Couple years, like 2 or 3 years ago. I just remember everyone's pipes were freezing.
Yeah. So obviously the hottest months in the park are May through August. Coldest months are October through March. Snowfalls range around 28 inches in January to they actually don't have any average snowfall from May to September. So kind of interesting. And they do experience 211 days of precipitation. So kind of a rainy park.
We're like totally prepared to go.
Yeah, right.
Weather-wise. Like we won't be shocked by the weather.
No, I feel like the weather in Mount Rainier was worse.
Yeah, it's going to be the ruggedness that we'll have to get used to.
Yeah. So obviously Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve occupies the northernmost section of the southeastern Alaska coastline between the Gulf of Alaska and Canada. So if you're not watching us on YouTube, it's kind of that little sliver that comes down south of Alaska if you're looking at the whole state.
It's like the leg.
Yeah.
That goes along British Columbia.
Yeah. So it's pretty southern part of Alaska. Some probably in Canada would say it should be part of Canada.
Hey, we bought it fair and square.
Yeah, right.
For pennies on the dollar.
So there's a ton of mountains in this park. So some of the major peaks are Mount Fairweather at 15,325 feet.
Which actually has quite bad weather.
Yes.
Terrible dad joke.
Yeah. I get it now. Took me a bit. It's been a long day.
That's because you're smart. You have to stoop down to very dumb levels to get my joke.
We got Mount Carilion topping out at 12,726 feet. Mount Salisbury at 12,169 feet. And Mount Wilbur at 10,820 feet. In all, there are over 150 named mountain peaks in the park that are over 8,000 feet.
It's actually where the first Salisbury steak was consumed by John Muir. That is a lie.
That is
that is not a factual fact.
Yeah, so the terrain, this is the cool part about this park, is the terrain is so varied depending on where you are. So you've got rugged mountain ranges that kind of intermingle with the Pacific in a maze of ice-scoured fjords, valleys, beaches, straits, and islands. And this is another cool part. With anywhere in the park, no point of land or sea is more than 30 miles from shore. So that's a pretty cool little fact.
Yeah, it almost looks like, again, for those watching the video, it looks like almost like it's very vascular, like blood vessels from far away, and it's just all waterways and inlets and things. It's really cool.
It looks really cool. Someday I'll get there.
Yep.
Animals in the park. So we got over 300 species of plants that call this park its home. They have 5 major land ecosystems in this park. So wet tundra, coastal forest, alpine tundra, glaciers, and meadows. In the waters around the park, you've got humpback whales, orcas, stellar sea lions, harbor seals, sea otters, porpoises. There's large brown and black bear populations. Now, this, Joe, is actually really cool, and I never heard of this before.
Is it a bear fact?
Yes.
And we verified it?
I verified it. The rare blue glacier bear lives in Glacier Bay National Park. So it's a color phase black bear, sometimes referred to as the blue bear. It is a subspecies of the American black bear with a silver, blue, or gray hair.
Oh, cool. Like almost like when you see an oil slick and it gets like a little colorful.
Yeah.
Is that what the hair does?
Yeah, I searched for them, and they look kind of blue, and they're big. So if they're standing on their hind legs, they're over 11 feet
It's
tall.
called a what? A blue?
It's called rare blue glacier bear. So for those listening, Joe is pulling up a picture.
I'm looking up images
Yeah,
right now.
that top
All
corner
right, hold
one.
on. I'm going to make sure this is live over here.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're really cool looking. And the next picture, they actually kind of like look blue. So they're very unique and rare to this area, and I just found that kind of fascinating. So if you go to
Glacier, a cool looking bear.
Yeah, if you go to Glacier, you might see a blue bear, which is kind of cool. The park also has lots of moose, wolves, Sitka, black-tailed deer, mountain goats, and bald eagles. So before I wrap up the location, I'm going to go into some of the risks that you might encounter in this park, because it is a very remote park, and there's only one area of the park that's kind of built up. I believe it's in that cove we mentioned earlier. So obviously hypothermia is a major risk if you're hiking in this park.
Especially with all that precipitation. If it's rainy a lot,
yeah, you could
get
have
your clothes wet.
Yeah, you could have long periods of rainy, overcast, cool weather, which is very normal for this part of Alaska. And summer daytime temperatures are usually in the range of 45 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and nights stay cool to near freezing. So it's recommended, and this is right from the Park Service, that you bring hat, gloves, and rain gear and waterproof foot gear. So
that's probably if you're just hiking, let alone camping for a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an interesting one. I've never heard of this before. It's called paralytic shellfish poisoning. So eating mussels and clams in Glacier Bay is not recommended, as there's a neurotoxin that causes paralytic shellfish poisoning. And they're in high concentrations in the area. This is a naturally occurring toxin that affects humans as well as other animals and can lead to sudden death.
Ooh, I wonder if it shuts down like central nervous system and stuff.
Yeah, like paralyzes so you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't eat any of the mussels or clams if you're hiking.
All right, I don't like them, so that's perfect.
Obviously, bears are a issue in this park. Glacier Bay is home to both black bears, brown/grizzly bears. And
that's where they're big.
Yeah, and
when you get up in cold climate, they get bigger.
Yeah,
to live better, and they're scary up there.
Yeah, we always tell you kind of what to do when hiking in bear country, but to lessen your chances of encountering a bear, make noise while you're hiking. You always want to travel in groups. Avoid traveling at night. Food, garbage, anything that has a scent to it must be stored properly, either in strung up in a tree, or
throw shellfish at them.
Yeah, throw shellfish at them.
Temporarily paralyze them.
I've hiked with those bear-resistant bear kegs, and sometimes campgrounds will have metal containers that you can store your food in. So be careful with that. Giardia,
they can still smell through it. It's supposed to just keep them from getting it, so they still get attracted to you. That's the irony of it. I think sometimes people think that it blocks the scent. It's like no. They can smell it. It's just they'll be trying to get in for a long time.
Your best bet is to put it in a bear keg and hang that 50, 100 feet downwind from wherever you're sleeping.
Yeah, between trees, not against a tree.
Because from what I remember, from what I've been told by rangers, is you want to get the food higher than the bear's smell zone. So even on a bear, even on his hind legs, think those blue bears can get up to 11 feet. So you really got to be hanging that food higher than 11 feet so that they can't smell it. Giardia is a concern in this park. So people come to places like Alaska and see the crystal blue water and think it's really clean, and they drink it, and then they're on the toilet for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So even though water may look clean, you do not want to drink it without either boiling it or filtering it or chemically treating it. Whenever I hike, obviously we have fire, but I always bring a filter and chemical treatment.
There could be dead animals upstream, fecal matter from animals upstream, things like that. That's what's going to get you.
Tides are a big concern in this park, especially a lot of the hiking happens on the beaches. So Glacier Bay does experience dramatic tide changes, up to 25 feet in 6 hours. So
that's wild.
So yeah, I mean, in Washington, we camped on the beach in Olympic National Park. So if you're camping on the beach in Glacier, you just got to be mindful that the tides can, go up 25 feet. So you want to make sure you're not...
Don't be against the water.
Yeah, you're not waking up in the middle of the night
spots.
to the ocean slapping on your back. So obviously moose are an incredible problem in Alaska in general. Anyone who's been there, I remember seeing them walking down streets in Anchorage.
I wouldn't say they're a problem.
Yeah.
They can be a problem for you.
Yes.
Because that's their house.
That's their house. Anyone who's been to Alaska knows that moose are more common than people in Alaska. And
they're mean. They can be mean for no reason.
Huge.
And they are huge.
They're absolutely massive. If you've never seen a moose in person, you'll be more scared of them than bears.
Did you ever see that video of the moose walking on the freeway that's like 10 feet tall?
No.
Oh. You keep talking. I'll look it up and see if I can find it for the video.
So other than moose, there's a poisonous plant in the park called baneberry that you really got to be careful of. It's very toxic to humans. It's a member of the buttercup family and aptly named bane, which is a derision from the Anglo-Saxon word meaning murderous. All parts of the plant are toxic. Ingesting just one berry can cause numbness in the mouth and tongue. The poison in 3 berries is enough to kill a child, and 6 berries will effectively shut down the respiratory system in an adult.
It was born in the dark.
Yeah.
You merely adopted it.
It's the baneberry.
Baneberry. So, that's just good advice.
Sorry. My bad.
So that's just good advice whenever you're hiking out in the wilderness. If you are not sure, like if you're thinking about eating something and you're not sure what it is, don't eat it. Because you could end up in Alaska eating something called a baneberry that could literally kill you with 6 berries. So difficulty in general in this park, I'll kind of breeze through this pretty quickly so Joe can get to the character profile. But there really aren't any maintained trails in this park's wilderness. The backcountry hiking pretty much sticks to beaches, glacial riverbeds, alpine meadows due to the rugged terrain and thick alder thickets. So you can hike anywhere in the park you want from what I read, but
yeah, they're designated camping spots, but outside of that, it's pretty rugged.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good hikes around Bartlett Cove, and that is the only developed area within Glacier. So it's Glacier Bay. So it's a very remote, rustic park. We mentioned that the tides change really fast. During the summer, the days last 18 hours long here. So if you're in the summer and you're doing any alpine hiking, make sure to bring plenty of water. And one thing people forget when they're hiking in the mountains is sunscreen.
Especially when it's cold. They don't think they need it.
Yeah. You'll get so burned up if you don't put sunscreen on your face.
Yeah.
I've done it before.
That was in Africa when we got up to the top of Kili. I got sunburned like instantly.
Yeah.
And any exposed skin was just sunburned because you're like above the atmosphere. There's no atmospheric protection. You just like everything looked yellow. I remember it was very, very different looking.
Yeah. So one final note that if you are backcountry hiking or camping or even boating in the area, you do need a free permit between May 1st and September 30th. So just keep that in mind. So Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about Mr. Kevin O'Keefe?
Sure. But first I'm going to show this sweet video of this moose real quick. It's like 1 second long. Look at how big this thing is. It's on a 2-lane street. Look at that thing.
They're massive.
It's twice the size of an SUV. There's an SUV parked, like people are backing up. This thing is massive.
Yeah.
That is so wild. Jeez. Yep. It's their house. We just live near it. Yeah. And sometimes go into it, and if they don't want us there, we're not going to be there. All right, so we'll move on. Kevin O'Keefe. He's a male, age 36 at the time of his disappearance. Now his experience was that he was an outdoors enthusiast, so he was into the hiking and camping. He resided in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
And he frequently went out hiking and camping.
Yeah.
He told loved ones that he'd always wanted to go camping in Alaska, so by the summer of 1985, Kevin had spent a ton of time researching different locations in Alaska that he could potentially visit. So Kevin ended up choosing Glacier Bay National Park as his favorite. given the primitive nature of the Alaskan wilderness and how remote it is, which is exactly what we're into. If you're really into hiking, you start wanting to get away from touristy spots and getting into areas where you can truly disconnect. So I totally understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
So Kevin was smart, and granted, this is the 80s too.
Yeah.
So it's like
So the
not
year I was
now.
born?
Yeah.
Good year.
It's a long time ago. So
Yes.
even less developed than now, and it's still rugged. So Kevin was pretty smart. He decided he needed to take a class on how to survive in Alaska. So he actually took a class in survival in the Alaskan wilderness. So as far as prepared goes, he was already an outdoorsman, and he went above and beyond and took a specific class pointed at surviving in the areas he was going to.
Which is more than we can say for probably 99% of the cases we follow.
Agreed. I'd say that's even above and beyond what you normally need to do. Like if we ever go there, we're going to do a ton of reading and stuff, but we probably wouldn't take a class. We'd probably look up and say, what's the gear list? What do you need? What should we expect?
We've never taken an actual wilderness survival.
No.
I mean, we've done trial by fire.
Yeah. I've watched like YouTube videos of people like you have, like different things, but not a specific pointed class.
I mean, obviously, if you can take one of these classes, do it. I think also if you have common sense and you do your research and prepare properly, you can safely backcountry hike and, learn on the go a little.
Well, and I totally agree, and I think it's obviously a good idea, and that's why this case is so compelling.
Yeah.
Because, again, every now and then we'll get people that maybe you could tell, like, oh, they weren't really that good at it. This is a guy who was good at it and was overly prepared.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the timeline. On September 20th, 1985, Kevin flew from Sacramento to Juneau, Alaska, where he commuted his way up to Glacier Bay National Park. When he arrived at the park's headquarters, he gave his itinerary to the rangers. He said that he'd be over near the Wolf Point area against the water and said that he was going to be there for about 3 weeks. Kevin planned on leaving on October 10th. So actually, I'll pull this up on the map. This is actually Wolf Point right here.
Yeah.
That's why I kept zooming into that.
So you said he got dropped off by a boat at that spot?
Yeah, I think I go into it right here.
Okay.
You can't hike there or drive there. Like you have to be like either flown in or anything or something like that. So on September 22nd, so this is 2 days later, Kevin took a float plane to the Muir Inlet north of Wolf Point to establish base camp. For the next couple of weeks, no one in Kevin's family or any of the park rangers heard from Kevin. But the trip was supposed to be secluded, so that was normal. He gave him his itinerary, said, I'll be around here.
Yep.
And from all intents and purposes, that's kind of where he stayed. So he landed up in this region and set up base camp. They said it was north of Wolf Point, but there's not a lot here. So it was kind of in this area.
Or like maybe right on the water even. Or
possibly. It didn't say exactly where.
Yeah.
And since these are so rugged, like you can't see trails or like, hey, here's the trailhead.
There are no trails really.
It just is it is wilderness.
Yeah, cool.
So now we fast forward to October 8th. This is 2 days before Kevin said he was planning to leave. A couple of park rangers were in a boat patrolling some of the waterways around Wolf Point, which is the area he was camping. So the rangers decided to check in on Kevin and see how he was doing. When they came upon where Kevin's camp was, they immediately knew something was wrong. His tent was not in the area it was supposed to be. In national parks, they usually have that designated square of like soil or gravel. It's like usually like a box, and they say, put your stuff here. And they do that so you don't trample any of the park areas and you keep it all, this is going to be the one area where nothing's going to grow. It's for people. So his tent was actually down a few meters on the beach that butted up against his campsite. Some of his gear was placed outside the tent. It wasn't strewn about, and I think that's important to note.
Yeah.
And we do have the reports from the rangers, so I'm going to read from these reports, and I'll throw them up on the screen too. You won't be able to see them real well here, but you'll kind of get an idea of what was going on. And we'll share these on the website as well. So on 10/8/85, and this is the results of their investigation, at approximately 1600 hours, that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, while on patrol, David Neneth and myself visited a campsite believed to be that of Kevin O'Keefe of Sacramento, California. The campsite was located in an intertidal alcove on Wolf Point in the east arm of Glacier Bay. And that's where I zoomed in on. I don't know exactly what that means, so I zoomed in on that area, but it gives you an idea of where they're talking about on Wolf Point. The initial observation showed a high tide debris line at the base of the tent. We called out, but received no answer. At that time, we zipped open the tent and observed a sleeping bag laid out on a blue foam pad and a green Kelty backpack lying beside the sleeping bag.
So it looks like he had just been in there. Like, all his stuff was unpacked.
Yep.
No sign that, like, a bear attacked his tent or something and, threw everything around.
Yeah, I'd say the one thing is they saw a high tide debris line at the base of the tent. It didn't sound like it got up to the tent. So take that with a grain of salt. It says we walked around the camp ranging as far as 100 yards, about 100 feet to the north of the tent. We found 2 stuffed sacks at the base of a clump of alder. A palpation of the sacks led us to believe that this was his food cache. Because O'Keefe was not due to be picked up until the 10th, we left his camp untouched, thinking he was out on a day hike. An additional note was that the tent had a broken pole that held up the rainfly. So one of the top poles in the top looked like it was potentially broken.
Yeah.
So now this is 10/9, a day later.
Okay.
10/9/85, so October 9th, 1985. I returned and motored by in a drumlin at 11:30 hours. That's in the morning, so I think that's the boat he was in. The area appeared to have been untouched overnight. I then picked up David Nemeth and Jane Letarte from Nunatah Cove, and we motored to Wolf Point. We went ashore to investigate. The tent had not been repaired, and the gear didn't appear to have been disrupted. We then anchored offshore until dark, then returned to Goose Cove for the night. At 18:30 hours, that's 6:30 at night, Bartlett Cove was notified that a search should be initiated as it appeared that O'Keefe was missing. An overflight was requested for the next morning, and notification was made to acting SUPT dot. I don't know. Is that superintendent?
I'm guessing that's Superintendent Gary.
Is that a title with the Park Service, like a superintendent of the park?
Yeah.
Okay. I just don't know. Gary Vequist with a request that the Alaska State Troopers be notified and alerted that the Sea Dogs be put on standby, pending the result of the overflight. Later this evening, we were notified that an overflight was scheduled for 10:00 hours the next morning. So now we are on October 10th, 1985. This is the day he was supposed to be leaving. So if he was gone doing something else, this is the day in his itinerary that he was supposed to come back.
Yeah.
On 10/10/85 at 0800 hours, we motored from Goose Cove to the western shore of the Muir Inlet and checked the shoreline to Wolf Point. We arrived at Wolf Point at 0900 hours and went ashore to take an inventory of the equipment. See attached sheet for the complete inventory of the tent, pack, and food caches. We do have that too, so we'll be posting that online. At 1000 hours, a Cessna 206 on floats from Glacier Bay Airways arrived with Art Hayes as a pilot and Ranger Lee Seelig as observer. I then got aboard and we made a 2-hour overflight. See attached map of the sea area. I don't have that and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So that did not come in the FOIA request. Nemeth and Letarte went ashore to do a hasty search of the area. The flight and hasty search turned up nothing. Seelig then disembarked the plane and was instructed to await the Sea Dogs before continuing the search, so as not to further contaminate the area with human scent.
So before you go further, my initial, first of all, it seems like he went out on September 20th, or he flew there. September.
So the 22nd is when he actually went out to establish his base camp.
It's now the 10th, and it still doesn't even sound like a full-fledged search is underway. It's a couple rangers and a plane kind of flying around, not to take anything away from that, but
and they have no idea when essentially the first missing would have been. I mean, it could have been 4 or 5 days before
the 30th of September.
It could have been 2 days after.
Yeah,
he got there. They have no idea.
So obviously Joe researched this, so I don't know the case, but I can already say in my head that this is not a good sign that the search is moving this slow, and it's not anything to do with the park or the rangers. This is a very remote park.
Yeah,
there's not like a bunch of trails they can hike up to go to a spot, and even the equipment available. It's such a remote park. I mean,
well, and there was nothing occurring that seemed off itinerary. Even when they first saw the stuff, and that's why I said it was important. It wasn't strewn about. Like they explained it as his stuff was kind of set out around the tent.
Yeah.
So they didn't think anything of it. Like, okay, maybe he's just gone. we'll check back in tomorrow, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like, all right,
Like maybe
he's
you
still
went on a
not
day
back.
hike.
Yeah, nothing's been touched. This doesn't
Yeah.
look. Now let's start raising some red flags.
Okay.
So at 14:30 hours, that's 2:30 in the afternoon.
I'm so glad you know military time so quickly.
It's just -2.
I know, but
2 scent/tracking dogs and handlers from the Sea Dogs in Juneau arrived via a chartered Livingston ERA helicopter with Charlie McLeod as pilot. This is a really detailed report, by the way.
This is a very detailed report.
Oh, yeah. You know they have nothing better to do. So Sea League accompanied with the Sea Dogs, Riley Ritchie, Oakbay, Axe with Taco, and Dave Haas, Juneau, Alaska with Rinny. So they even named where the dogs came from.
That's funny.
And searched the area until dark. At 18:30 hours, that's 6:30, excuse me. During the ground search, Nemeth and Letarte were on board the helicopter doing an aerial overflight of the area. See attached map. Again, I don't have that map. The Drumlin anchored up at Wolf Point overnight. At 13:30 hours, that's 1:30, and 16:30 hours, I made a radio announcement requesting information from any vessel who may have seen O'Keefe at any time during the period he was camped at Wolf Point. There was no response at this time.
Now, just to cut into, people listening might be like, why are you just reading this report? This is like the most accurate description of kind of a search that we've seen in a while from the National Park Service. And usually we're going off of, secondhand, thirdhand, fourth-hand information from like news reports and, reporting on this. It wouldn't do the information justice if we took this report and then, wrote it out in our own words just to describe it back to you. You really got to hear what these people are writing because it's so incredibly detailed. We're not used to these kind of reports.
Yeah, this is,
these cases.
This is written when they were doing this or directly after. So you're getting.
I'm guessing they're taking notes while they're searching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably taking notes. This is the words of the people who did the actual search and how they saw the scene. So this is, they didn't have video back then, or they did, but they're not going to have, handheld video cameras doing this stuff. So this is the best visual you could represent of what was happening real time while this guy was missing.
Yeah.
Search and rescue dogs or Sea Dogs were flown in with their handlers in Juneau to help with the search. We did talk about this. This is the results of the investigation. So Richard O'Ginn, the Alaska NPS Regional Office, and Sergeant Robert Lone, which is a state trooper, were kept updated on the search progress on a daily basis. Information from people he had contacted at Bartlett Cove and his relatives was used to determine his plans and any type of equipment. His sister and his mother were first notified by telephone on October 10th of 85 at 13:16 hours. That's 1:16 in the afternoon. To the frequent contacts in subsequent days. Mr. O'Keefe had made several other camping trips in recent years, but never for such a long period of time. He planned to take a short day hike from his tent site. His mother was concerned because of her son's bad knee. During the search on 10/12/85, a pair of hiking boots and hat believed belonging to O'Keefe was found about a half a mile northeast of the tent site. So he had a bad knee.
Yeah.
They found hiking boots and a hat, which they're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's probably his.
Yeah,
There's not like tons of people were out there.
There's a good chance in this search and rescue operation that whatever they find is related to O'Keefe, just because, A, the park is so massive. It's so hard to get to these spots. It is 1985. There was less tourism to the parks at that time.
Yeah.
It
was just difficult to get there at that time.
Yeah.
So this goes back. That made a statement about 2 days from there, but we're now on the 11th of October.
Okay.
They expanded the search and included another dog handler and his search dog. Also, the helicopters flew an aerial search pattern of the search areas again. The high probability search area was searched thoroughly, and a request for anyone with information was placed over VHF radio. So the land search continued on October 13th of 85 with 3 remaining employees, Lee Seelig and Dave Nemeth, and Jerry Case, until late morning when they began a search along the shoreline from the MV Drumlin, that's the boat they were on. They returned to Bartlett Cove at approximately 2000 hours. So that's 8 p.m. Gary Vequist, Jerry Case, and Randolph Hensley flew the search site on 10/14 of 85 to conduct a shoreline and aerial search of the area. After the flight, the search was officially discontinued. However, during winter aircraft and vessel patrols, and I think it gets cut off on that one. Yeah, I didn't have the follow-up. Let's see. Yeah, I didn't have the sheet on that one.
Okay.
I think this might be it.
Yeah, Joe's just looking.
I'll move on. All right. This is a separate report. They're talking about the third dog handler. Like I said, we're gonna share this. All right. And they want to sort of check the Wolf Point, then check the entire north shoreline of West Coast. Of note, here we go. The Sea Dogs alerted to item 76 through 92 on the attached inventory. Jane Letarte found item 93. So that's where they found some of the stuff that they're looking at.
Yeah.
I'll throw it up on here, but again, this is going to be posted. It's a very detailed list of all the stuff they have. I mean, it's like water bottle
stuff with them too.
Number 7, water bottle, 1 liter. Number 8, water bottle, half liter. Number 9, stuff sack, blue. Number 10, stuff sack, blue, smaller. 11, cord, nylon. So they were incredibly thorough. So they had mentioned that the dog found item 76 through 92 in a different spot. So that would include a black plastic bag, mothballs, another bag with plastic, a ticket for Alaska Airlines, some food, the crackers, salami. The following items were found several hundred yards from the tent. That was the boots, their Vibram soled Wilderness brand, size 10.5, hat, knit brown wool. And then a couple hundred yards from the tent site, they found the gloves that were green knit gloves that were lined. So we
had a lot of stuff with him.
He had a ton of stuff, but he was there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of food. And that was another thing, too, is it seemed like there was a lot of food left.
Yeah, so that makes me think that...
Keep it in your back pocket.
Okay.
I'll keep See, you've been doing most of the stories recently. I know. Yeah. See how difficult it is to hold your theories in?
Yeah.
So, all right, so here's a little... So we have Kevin. Well, we have no sign of Kevin, but they did discover his campsite and virtually all of the equipment you'd expect to be at a campsite in Alaska of someone who's staying there for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Well, it was all there, and his backpack was fully packed as if he was going to go on a hike. It had food, it had extra clothes, it had water. It was all packed right up against a tree, all of his sleeping equipment and his cooking equipment, and oddly, there were lots of food that Kevin still had left in the campsite. That was out in the open, and no animals had touched it.
Interesting.
As they began searching the outer areas of the campsite, dogs were able to locate Kevin's boots and gloves, as we said. There was early speculation that Kevin was attacked by bears or some other predator, but the park ranger, who knew the area extremely well and had seen other bear attacks, said, I don't think this is a bear attack because there's no sign of a death struggle anywhere at the camp. And if you get attacked by a big predator, you're going to fight for your life to save yourself. Mm-hmm. You're going to grab onto things. You're going to flail around. And this is his words. It's fairly obvious. And there's none of that. There's also no blood or remains or any indication that someone was hurt in this space. And if an animal had come into this camp and attacked Kevin and eaten Kevin, they certainly would have taken that food that was out and about in the campsite. As the investigation continued, rangers noted how strange it was that no animals were coming into the campsite at all. There's just no activity, nothing in the area. It's like the animals were staying away from Kevin's site. So that's one of the things they said.
Cue the X-Files.
I know, right? So investigators went to speak with Kevin's family and asked if they had any signs that he was looking to end his own life, or any relevant information they could give him. The response was that Kevin was really happy, well-adjusted, including being excited about the trip. Plus, why would he prep so hard?
Yeah.
Like, if he was going there to end his life, why do you care about survival?
Yeah.
Which is a very good point.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's it. That's where we're left. The tent's not in the space it's supposed to. It looked like it butted up against where the tide line went.
Yeah.
So what it sounded like, his stuff was placed out really well, right up to where the tide came up to, but it wasn't kind of disheveled.
Yeah.
Tons of food left over, a bag packed like it was ready for a day hike, boots and knit gloves a couple hundred yards away from the tent, in 2 different spots.
Yeah.
And that is all the information we have.
Very interesting. So, to recap, he was out there for a few weeks. These rangers were on a boat kind of just checking in on the area. came across his campsite. Campsite looks virtually undisturbed. Obviously, his tent was in the wrong spot. It wasn't in the designated camping spot, right up on the water, basically, the tide line. But his gear was set out in an orderly fashion, not strewn about like a bear had come and attacked his campsite and, shredded anything.
Yeah. And
there was even food, which, in bear country and really wild Alaska, you would think like salami sitting out would be a bear magnet.
Yeah, or even just disturbed mice, by the small animals would have bored holes through the stuffed sacks.
I mean,
things
even
like
when we were hiking in Zion, like the little mice and rats, whatever the heck those things were, got into my food that was tied up in a tree. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
the squirrels climbed down my rope and that was
one night.
That was one night.
And remember, we woke up to all the big cat footprints circling the tent.
Oh yeah,
and we never heard them. That was terrifying. There were tons of footprints. So we pulled into that camp late at night, set up, went to sleep, woke up. Mike's food had already been eaten, and our campsite was full of basically mountain lion prints everywhere. Yeah. And that was one night.
Yeah, in the
desert.
When we were hiking in Canada, the Canadian Rockies, one of the mornings we got up, about 20 feet from our tent were several sets of grizzly prints.
There you go.
I don't know that they were grizzly bears, but massive bears were literally walking 20 feet from our tent while we were sleeping, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
But the prints were fresh.
And that wasn't 3 weeks of the same area. So I zoomed in on the map here, and you can kind of see. I'll make sure I'm streaming it. This is Wolf Point.
Okay.
And what I noticed I noticed this when I was looking around, you can see these are obviously man-made structures, it looks like, unless they're like snow.
Or garbage.
Well, it looks like potentially these are tents. So I'm imagining he maybe had his tent in an area like this, because this is up here is very kind of mountainous and heavy in trees. This is kind of open.
Yeah.
And you're close to the water. So again, this isn't confirmed. I'm imagining he was kind of in this area. So looking around here, it's pretty open in this spot. So if he's there, up here is more wooded and mountainous, so I can't imagine it's good camping.
Yeah.
And if his tent butted up against a high tide line, these are too high.
Yeah.
So I really assumed it was kind of like this beach area.
Yeah.
And there's not much area to go.
No.
So this is kind of my visual of it. Like, okay, if he's somewhere in here, where are they going to look? They're going to go up and down the shoreline. They're going to go in a little bit, but they found all this stuff kind of around there.
Yeah, this is a peculiar.
So what do you think?
Case. Well,
what do you think?
A couple ideas are going through my head. So one of the things that's tripping me up is the fact that his boots were found, what'd they say, half mile away from his rest of his gear.
They said a couple different things. When you look at the gear list, I'll pull this thing up again.
Yeah.
They have two different notes. The following were found several hundred yards from the tent site, and that's his boots. And then right below it, the following was found a couple hundred yards from the tent site. That was his gloves.
Okay.
So that you could leave open to interpretation. I'd say several means at least 300 yards.
I do know that we were warned about this in Glacier, that the deer there will actually, if you have, leave your sweaty boots outside overnight, the deer will actually come into your camp and pick your boots up and take them.
Oh, because of the salt? Like they like
salt.
licking it?
Yeah, so they recommend that you don't leave your...
Yeah, that and marmots.
Stinky...
They said marmots do that too.
So, maybe... Because the first thing I'm thinking of is he somehow got, sucked into the water and drowned, and his body was washed out to sea.
Okay.
Just because, obviously, like I mentioned earlier on, the tides can change dramatically in this part of the Alaska, and maybe it was a warmer day out or something, and he went for a swim. Maybe he got done hiking all day, and he decided to go for a quick little swim to cool down, or who knows what he was doing, but he got into the water and somehow couldn't get back to shore and ended up drowning. Okay. Which is why they would have never found his body, and there was no sign of an animal attack.
So I'll reread this.
Okay.
Just because I thought that too. The observation showed a high tide debris line at the base of the tent.
Yeah.
We called out but received no answer. At that time, we zipped open the tent, observed a sleeping bag, laid out on a blue foam pad in green Kelty backpack laying beside sleeping bags. So all of his sleeping stuff was laid out perfectly in the tent, and the tent had the debris line go up to it but not over it.
Yeah. So,
okay.
I mean, so I think one theory is he drowned somehow, which is why they didn't find the body. Finding the boots and everything farther away, like if he had gone for a swim, you would have left your boots near the shore. Like you leave your clothes right by where you're going into the water. You wouldn't,
and I don't think he's swimming in that water.
No, it's probably freezing.
Yeah, it's probably freezing all year round.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with this much water around and the issue with tides, I think drowning is a possibility. I would say something like he got caught in some bad weather, got wet, and suffered from hypothermia and started taking stuff off as he was walking away from camp. But that theory doesn't line up with me because there was food left out and things like salami, and it was untouched yet. So that leads me to think that he disappeared pretty recently before the Rangers came to his campsite. So what could it be? I mean, there's a very high probability of he could have been attacked by an animal, but like the Rangers said, they found no evidence of a struggle. A bear attack is a messy ordeal, and there would be evidence of that, and they didn't find any of that. And it's a very strange note that they made the mention of no wildlife in the area. This reminds me of the that old guy in New York, the hunter that went missing. Remember that case from a few years ago? I can't think of the guy's name, but
vaguely I'm remembering it.
When the FBI showed up.
Yep. They showed up out of nowhere and wouldn't answer any questions.
Yeah, and people on the search made the point to mention that it seemed very odd in the forest that day. It was like all the animals had disappeared in the area he went missing.
Yes.
Yeah, you remember that now?
That triggered it for me.
Tom Messick.
Yep.
That's the guy.
Okay.
That's the case. If
you
haven't
have a
listened.
great memory. Good for you. Yeah. I wish I had that memory.
Well, and if you're listening to this and you haven't heard that episode, go back.
What episode number is it?
I don't know.
Take a guess.
8?
Okay.
12? I don't know. It was one of our earlier episodes. Yep. But in that case, the people in the search made a point to mention that it was very odd that day that it was like the forest was scrubbed of animals. This kind of reminds me of the same thing where, Alaska is teeming with wildlife.
Dude, it's episode 12.
Episode 12,
You said it. It was your second guess? You
Yeah.
said 8? Nah, I think it's 12. Look at you. Holy cow.
So,
episode 12, Tom Messick. Check it out.
Yeah. So I find it very strange that it was big enough of an issue that they made a mention that it was like the animals are staying away from this campsite.
Thing. You have people that know the area, experts, that they notice something different that weirded them out.
Yeah.
That they made mention of it.
I mean, in Glacier, we had deer trailing us off the trail even. I mean, there's so much wildlife in these parks. That is very odd to me.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not like a visitor saying it. It's a guy who works is like, there's no animals here. How's the food staying out? And they're like, how's it staying out overnight? And to me, it's like, it could have been 4 or 5 days maybe.
So the only thing I can think of that makes sense to me other than, somehow he drowned is he had a second pair of boots with him. And he went on a day hike, and something happened. As we know, this is very rugged terrain once you get away from the coastline, and it's very thick. Like, if you go missing in some of this vegetation, you're never going to be found. I mean, it's that thick. And I'm wondering if maybe he got some stuff out to eat, and he's like, I'm going to go that doesn't sound like something he would do if he's trained in wilderness survival, because everyone knows not to just leave food laying about in your campsite. But maybe he went on a day hike and fell, and there's no trails around here, so he'd have to be kind of, stomping through the brush.
Yeah, so here's I'm looking at the gear list, just kind of like what you said of how much stuff he had. So it says the following items were found in his Kelty frame backpack: mothballs, tent stakes, cords, AA batteries, gaiters, shoestrings, cord, flashlight, fragment of Kodak film box, stuff sack, handy wipes, tent stakes, cord, bits of cellophane and paper. So he had a fully packed pack.
Yeah.
Rain gear, jacket, pants, a hat, a camouflage hat, shoes. So there were shoes in there too.
Yeah.
Trowel, plastic bags with clothes inside. So he had this thing all packed up.
So it sounds like
an empty film disc.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing camera on here. I'd be interested to see if like the camera was gone.
It sounds like he had all his gear in his campsite. So that theory of him going out for a day hike, unless he had even more stuff with him.
Well, I mean, you come in by plane and boat. You don't have to carry all of it.
Yeah.
You're unloading it, building your base camp up, and then you can
bring more stuff.
Exactly. This is way more stuff than any one person could carry if they have
and
to
obviously
hike it.
These rangers meticulously detailed out the list. In reality, it's probably, if you looked at the volume of this stuff, I mean, cellophane paper, and I mean, it's not going to take up a lot of space.
Yeah, you could have most of this stuff in one pocket probably.
Yeah,
moleskin, earplugs, film, matches, sunglasses, gloves. That could all be in one tiny pocket.
I mean, if you took apart my first aid kit, you would have 40 items on this list.
Absolutely.
So, maybe it's not that much stuff, but nothing makes sense with this one. So I guess in my head, theories I've got that seem the most plausible is drowning. I think that close to water, something happened where he fell in, and it's probably so cold, maybe it shocked his system. I mean, he was only 36 years old, so we know he had a bad knee, but we don't know anything else about his health. So, I mean, anything's possible. Maybe the shock of the cold water falling in, he had a heart attack or something. And,
okay.
You're
full on drowning. You think there's some sort of incident where...
I would say foul play, but I mean, the chances of running into somebody, let alone somebody that's going to kill you in this part of the park, it's not like people are going to be in this part of the park doing like illegal activities. It's too remote.
You need to take a float plane to get there.
Yeah, that's not like the most convenient if you're growing drugs. And so foul play, I'm kind of ruling out unless there's some crazy person living out there, which I guess could... I think animal attack is a possibility, but there's no evidence of it. It's very odd to me that the food was left untouched. I don't know. Suicide, definitely. So hear me out on this theory.
Okay. I'll try not to interrupt you.
For a couple years, I watched that show on the History Channel, Alone. You ever remember that show?
Alone?
Alone.
I haven't had cable in like 15 years.
So the premise of the show is they have like 10 people, and they drop all of them off.
Do they hold their own cameras?
Yeah.
Okay, I do.
And the person who survives the longest before tapping out wins like $100,000 or something.
Okay.
And watching that show, it's amazing how quickly some people lose it when they're by themselves, like alone and secluded. Like some people on the show were able to go months on their own. Like, just fine. Their mental health is fine. And other people, after like 5 or 6 days, are kind of starting to go crazy. So did O'Keefe, he's out here for 2 weeks, completely by himself, secluded. It doesn't appear like anything happened to him or his campsite based on, the orderly fashion of the gear.
Yeah.
Did he have like a mental breakdown because of the seclusion and go crazy and just wander off into the woods or go and kill himself or do something irrational because of the fact that he was out here by himself? And some people that's why like NASA does those studies, long-term spaceflight studies, where they go to like the desert in Arizona and they lock people in like a mock space station for a year. Because they want to study how
they'll react,
how people react confined in a closed space, like together for a year. Some people not everyone's cut out for long-term spaceflight because some people just go crazy.
Yeah.
And like would murder everyone else. Like,
okay.
So, and watching it alone.
So
I wonder if the seclusion got to him, and even in the short period of time, 2 weeks, he went crazy and just like ripped his boots off and just like walked into the woods, and no one found him again. What do you think happened?
I don't know. And this is why this really been bugging me, because like I researched the case, so I watched some YouTube videos about it, about people that covered it. I read through the reports and stuff, and nothing stood out to me.
Yeah,
as a possibility outside of kind of what you said. I'm like, maybe he went on a day hike and got injured, but all the stuff that you would bring, like his camera, like shoot, like all the bag stuff is not there.
Yeah.
And then he had like under an alder bush, like a couple things, and then like the stuff that was strewn about, and I'm like, okay, even like that stuff aside, pretend that stuff that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Everything's at the site. And from what it appears, this is my assumption. I have nothing to back this up other than what it seems like.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of food left over.
Yeah.
So that told me, I'm like, did he start setting up camp and get whatever happened to him early on in the trip?
Yeah.
Or was his tent down there and everything laid out because he was packing up? You know, when you pack up, you just want to lay everything out.
Lay it so you can pack it properly.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I was like, okay, was that him laying everything out, or was that him laying it out prior to setting up base camp? You can go either way.
Yeah.
It's a big window of time with no contact.
Yep.
So,
and they have no natural areas to search. Like in most parks, if you're at a campsite, there's going to be a trail next to the campsite that maybe does a loop or it's an in and out or something. That's a good starting point. If the tent's here and they're missing, well, we're going to start searching the trail.
Yeah.
And fan out from there.
Yeah, and anytime you're in like something like Bureau of Land Management land where they're just
it's just open,
it's just open. You can kind of go where you want. That's where it's hard to determine. I never thought of the drowning thing. I don't think he was sleeping and caught up in it, but maybe he went to like take a bath or something. And maybe like was in too long and maybe he ate some shellfish. Like seriously, like what?
Yeah. Or those berries, the baneberry.
Exactly. Like, is there something he just made a simple mistake? And in Alaska, you can't make mistakes, especially by yourself. Like, or if he went hiking with just shoes on, maybe he went to go. Wasn't going to be a day hike. Maybe he went a couple 100 yards away.
And the thing about cold water, like I'm assuming this water is really cold, and I don't know if anyone's ever like gone swimming.
I'll start looking it up while you're talking.
Incredibly cold, like glacier water, and your body almost like there's a shock when you get in, but then your body almost kind of goes.
January 1st dives in Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
I can only be in there for a few seconds.
But your body almost kind of starts to go numb from the cold.
Oh yeah,
and if he went into the water like Joe said to maybe bathe, or maybe he got close to the shore and slipped and fell in, and I mean, it wouldn't take long for you to get, hypothermic in that kind of water. Joe, right now, for those listening, is trying to look up what the water temperature is in Glacier Bay.
Today it was 40 degrees. That's very cold.
Very cold. Yeah, I think drowning is I don't know how the circumstance could come about, other than like you said, maybe he's like, I'm going to take a quick dip, or maybe it was the end of the trip and he's like, I'm going to go take a quick, like a polar bear plunge into the water real quick by myself to the trip's done and to celebrate being out of there and like the quick, brisk nature of the cold water. But he underestimated how quickly you can become hypothermic in it. And even in that kind of cold water, like even trying to tread water, your legs kind of start to stop working even.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like on average, the hottest it gets is 57 degrees, and that is in July. 14 degrees Celsius.
He was there
the peak.
September, what's the range?
October, September. Peaks 13 Celsius to 11 Celsius.
So
it's cold. It was 5 degrees Celsius today, which was what we say that was 40 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's like upper 40s on average when he was there.
Can you Google how quickly you can become hypothermic in cold water? Out of curiosity, I think the two theories I'm going to hang my hat on while you're Googling this is all
right, at a water temperature of 32.5 degrees, death may occur in under 15 to 45 minutes.
There you go.
At a water temperature of 32 to 40 degrees, death may occur in 30 to 90 minutes. All right, so let's do 40 to 50.
Yeah.
An hour and 1 to 3 hours. Now that is 1 to 3 hours in the water, and that's 1 to 3 hours in the water, assuming that you can come out and warm up. When you're in a tent, like you don't have a lot of time to warm up when you're coming out.
Yeah, so I do think that potentially water played a role in his
They won't be able to pick up on this. Fine.
I definitely think that water could have played a role in his demise.
I'm starting to agree with you. I never even thought about that.
I think the other possibility is he did, due to the seclusion and isolation of being this far away from civilization, that he went crazy and ran off into the woods. And, I could totally see that, especially after watching that show alone. I mean, some of these people did not make it long, and they just started getting goofy in the head, and maybe that led him eating, he ate some shellfish. Or so I think those are my two theories. Just because nothing makes sense with this one.
I would lean more towards something in the water, like he went to bathe in the water and was in too long.
Yeah.
Couldn't get out.
Had a medical emergency from the shock of the cold.
And even then, even if he got out, what would you do? You'd go to your tent to warm up.
Yeah.
So then he would die in there. And
or maybe he went into the water and dropped something that he had brought with, and then went, because that in the Boundary Waters, I dropped my GoPro in the water and had to go swimming for it, and it was freezing.
Yeah, and they said tides come quick.
Yeah.
Maybe he got in, high tide came in, like he froze up, and then swept out with the tide.
Yeah. I don't
know. I have no clue.
I just think being that close to water, and in all of the search and rescue documents, they made no mention of like actually searching the underwater area. Not that, I mean, if there's tides that are that strong, it would just wisp you out to sea anyways.
Exactly.
Which might be why his body never was found. But I think a close second for me is the going crazy due to the isolation.
I don't think that one at all.
No?
I don't.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the water.
Yeah.
I think eat something in water. It makes the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, with that much water and his tent literally was up to the tide line, I mean, that would make the most sense to me. But
otherwise, aliens. Could always be aliens.
It could be aliens. You never know. So,
all right. Well, log on and tell us what you think. This is a pretty tough one for us. It's a crazy one. So let us know what you think online. Thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate you all for tuning in, listening, and sharing Locations Unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Subscribe on the YouTube channel. You can also join the YouTube for a paid subscription. That's the same thing as our Patreon. So our special shows that go on Patreon will also be available on the YouTube subscription. If you'd like to support the show monetarily through getting some cool swag, you can visit our Facebook store. And we didn't show these again, but we got cool coasters. We have magnets. We have playing cards. We have hats. We have mugs.
We got lots of stuff.
You can be all Locations Unknown everywhere and then go hiking. And if you get lost, they'll know that you at least knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Because you listened to the show.
Up until you went lost.
Or you can always, for $1 a month at minimum, join us on Patreon or the YouTube subscription, as we said. And lastly, remember when you're enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, taking a walk. Oh, that started it way too loud. Taking a walk in the woods. Always remember to leave no trace. Thank you, and we will see you all next time.